Hey everybody, welcome back to Sparks Fire and Baling Wire. Today we're going to work on getting the crankshaft put in here, get the pistons and rods put in, the camshaft. I think we can button up the bottom end. We'll see how far we get. Before I get started, I want to take a moment again to thank all my new subscribers. Subscriber rate's been steadily climbing throughout this build, and I really appreciate all the views I'm getting. It means a lot to me. Also, before I get started, I was called out in the last video when I put these sleeves in. I did this, but I didn't film it. Didn't think much of it at the time. I wish I would have done it now. It was pointed out to dry fit these sleeves before you put them in, which is before you put the O-rings on. Make sure everything slides in good, nothing's hanging up, no burrs. I did all that, I just didn't film it. There's no way to go back and change it now. Anyway, let's get started. Okay, I've got here a new set of main bearings. And the mains on this tractor are shimmed. So I got a set of shims for it. These are the bearings. I measured up the crank. The mains on this crank have been turned 20 thousandths. So I got 20 thousandths undersized bearings. And here are the rod bearings. And the rod journals have been turned down 10 thousandths on this crank. So we've got bearings, shims, plastic gauge, some engine assembly lube. Get the engine rolled over. Get the old bearings out of here. I'll give everything a thorough cleaning again. So I'll get the rear main seal ready to go into right away. Go ahead and clean out the oil journals too, one last time. This front bearing's got these lips on it because that serves as the thrust bearing. A lot of V8 engines, the thrust bearing's usually somewhere in the middle, but for some reason it's on the front on this one. Not much to install these, just make sure the tang's in the groove and the oil hole lines up. Wipe them out with a clean paper towel. Get the new seal worked in there. I should be ready to set the crank in. I also, off camera, took fine emery paper and polished all these journals. Made sure there are no burrs, everything's good. I get these cleaned up, get the new bearings put in them. If I can get this old seal out without stabbing myself. I'll get that cleaned up. This is just some lacquer thinner I'm using to clean everything with. Okay, the seal's installed. There's a little bit of seal sticking out. Trim that off. You don't want to leave it flush, leave it a little high so it compresses together. Helps it seal better so you don't get a leak in there. Put that bearing in, ready to go on. Just realize there's no locating groove for the top bearing. And then theoretically this cap could go on either way. But you want to make sure you get it the way it originally was. And this is not marked, but luckily for me, when I mocked this up and painted it, a little overspray got on there, so I know that goes towards the front. Okay, maybe I can get a moment without my phone ringing here. So this bearing goes in like that. Really glad I did get that paint on there, otherwise probably need to have the block taken to a machine shop and line honed if you didn't get that right. It's pretty important that it stays the same. And I'm going to lay out these shims. I got enough shims for 2 shims per main cap. I'm going to start out with both of them and check the clearance, and then remove one if need be. Yeah, I'll lay a piece of plastic gauge on there. If you've never used this stuff before, it's just a thin strip of plastic. You lay on there, then you torque the main caps down, and it will squish that plastic out. Then there's a chart you use to measure it, and it'll tell you what your bearing clearance is. Okay, now it's time to come to break out the manual, find out what the torque specs are, get that torque down. Okay, the manual says torque all these to 85 foot-pounds. When I'm torquing stuff down, I usually go half the level and hit them once and then go and set it. So now I'm at 85 foot-pounds. Okay, now I can pull them back off, measure what my clearance is. I don't know if you can see this on camera or not. You just line up how far out that's smashed with the chart on there and it'll tell you what your clearance is. And I've got plenty. So I'm going to remove one shim from each cap. I got an even 2/1000 on these two, and a little over 2 on that one. The manual says between 2 and 3/1000, so I'm going to call that good where it's at. I'll get that plastic scraped off. I'll do the same to the main caps, clean it up one more time, that's ready to be permanently assembled. Now the crankshaft can be set into its forever home. Shim's back in place. Went ahead and got grease smeared around on the top half of the bearings too. Shim's where I want them. Now that can be torqued down for one final time. Okay, everything's torqued down. Spins nice and easy. The next thing I'm going to do is install the camshaft. Those of you that watched the video back when I tore the engine apart remembers me doing this. If you're reusing the cam and tappets, you need to keep the tappets all in the same order because they develop a wear pattern as the engine runs. And if you mix them up, it'll just grind the cam down and ruin it in no time. So I got these lubed up and installed. Okay, all the tappets are in, ready for a camshaft. I don't know if you can see it or not. I got the crankshaft so the number 1 piston's on top dead center. There's the timing mark right there lined up. So I'll need to line that up with the camshaft. Okay, I got the cam set into the bearings. Just started, now I gotta line up the timing gear and it can go the rest of the way in. Hard to see the timing gear. There it is, right there. Okay, timing gears are lined up. Next step will be putting the pistons and connecting rods in. Take the connecting rods, loosen up the clamp bolt for the wrist pin. Now that can be pressed out. .11/16 deep well socket works pretty good for that. There it's apart. I can clean the rods up. I got new wrist pins. Start putting them back together. The old pistons removed from the rods. Rods are cleaned up. Got the new pistons ready to go. Did that in the last video. New wrist pin. Remember when I gapped the rings, I did them per each cylinder, which is probably overkill for a tractor engine. But the pistons are all labeled 1 through 4. So I got number 1 piston, number 1 connecting rod. And these pistons aren't labeled front to back. A lot of them have some kind of marking. The only thing this has on it's the standard stamped right there. I'm going to assume that's the front. So I'll keep them all that way. The bolt for the clamp goes that way. So go ahead and slide it together. And all you got to do is get the pin centered up in there. Center the rod. Then I can tighten that bolt down. Get that done on all 4 of them. They'll be ready to go in. Okay, rods are all clean, pistons assembled on them. Time to install all the new bearing shells. Okay, they're ready to go in the block. Now the pistons are ready to go in. I haven't done it yet, but you want to make sure all your rings, the gaps are staggered on them to reduce blow by. Now that that's done, get a little bath in oil. That'll lubricate the wrist pin and get oil in around the rings, make them slide in the bores easier. Okay, now that that piston's oiled up, go ahead and get the piston ring compressor put on it, tighten that down. You got that rod seated. I'm going to go ahead and take some plastic gauge, do the same thing I did on the main bearings, check the clearance on there. Okay, I torque that down, remove the cap, slide the gauge across till it lines up. 1.5 thousandths. The book says anywhere from 1 to 3 thousandths on the connecting rods, so 1.5 is beautiful. So I'll go ahead and get that scraped off, get some assembly lube in there, and get it retorqued down. These rod bolts get torqued to 40 foot-pounds. One down, 3 to go. Okay, all pistons and rods are in. All clearance is checked. Had 1.5 thousandths on number 1, 2, 3, and 4 all had number 2. Again, the tolerances are 1 to 3, so I'm right in the middle. I'm very happy with that. But the ultimate test, does it turn over smoothly without binding or grabbing on nothing? Yes, it does. Okay, everybody, that's going to do it for this video. One step closer. I would have filmed putting all the pistons in, but my battery's about dead. I'm down to probably a minute or less left here. One thing I forgot to mention, once these sleeves are in, put a bolt with a washer in there to hold them sleeves so they don't accidentally pop out while you're assembling the rest of the engine, because until the head's bolted on, there's really nothing to hold them sleeves in mechanically. But next time I go get the front cover on, governor, oil pump housing, oil pump, oil pan, get the bottom end buttoned up. We'll see where we get. Catch you next time. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, notification bell, all that good stuff. Make sure you leave comments down below. They're much appreciated.